Everything you need to know, you just heard. It is that simple. It sounds too easy. It sounds too good to be true. It is that simple.
Warning! You're watching Dr. Todd Lee TV, where theoretically you could learn a bunch of cool shit.
Greetings, Earthlings. It is I, Dr. Todd Lee. I am an IFBB Pro medical doctor and biochemist. This unique combination of skills is why I think I am the best person on YouTube to educate you as to how to safely use anabolic steroids or HRT for the purpose of bodybuilding or just lifestyle. Now, caveat, I don't agree with the use of anabolic steroids for lifestyle. I think lifestyle people should stick to HRT. And if you want to be the best of the best and you're willing to take the necessary lifestyle steps to be a monk and live a perfect life, like a Buddhist monk and a Spartan warrior combined, then you have the discipline to safely survive using anabolic steroids. And then that's for bodybuilders. So it's like there's regular people and then bodybuilders. And then people get angry about this. They're like, you're a gatekeeper. I am a gatekeeper. I've got a medical diploma that says it's my job to gatekeep the use of drugs so that dumb people don't hurt themselves, because most of the time, dumb motherfuckers start with 500 milligrams of testosterone a week and they get side effects because they're stupid. They're doing it wrong. That it's not a matter of opinion. It is wrong. So the correct way to start anabolic steroids is to use HRT doses. So 20 milligrams a test and 2 units of GH every day. Now, if you don't need HRT, you're probably too young to do this. HRT is for people who need it. If you're a non-bodybuilder and you're young enough that your body's making enough testosterone, enough growth hormone, you don't need to replace it. If it's not missing, you don't need to replace it. Then you don't have to do anything. Just lift and eat and you will grow until you hit a limit to where you're at the maximum human potential for your growing muscle. And at that point, to take yourself beyond the maximum human potential is when you would need superhuman levels of androgens or growth hormones to achieve that. That is when you run the risk of problems. Placing a healthy amount of hormones with the appropriate amount of hormones shouldn't be a problem. Going superhuman with hormones is where you have problems. Most of the time I see people who are just not smart enough to do this right, and they start using steroids and they get hurt. They fuck up their blood work or they disfigure themselves. They get acne, they have hair loss. I would say 99% of the people who learn to use drugs by watching YouTube will get hurt if they do it any other way. The only time I see people have good results is if they do it my way or they have me supervise it. All right, so just in case you can't afford me, I am a coach and I could be your doctor. I could be your doctor and your coach. The link is in the description box on how to hire me and Dr. Karina Dodson to help you. But if you can't afford us, that's why I make these videos, is they give you all the answers. You just have to be smart enough to scholastically absorb information. So that's why it's called Anabolic University, not anabolic marketing. So 20 milligrams and 2 units. If you can tolerate that, you escalate. If you can tolerate that, you escalate. At some point, you will either have too much DHT, too much estradiol. That's when you stop escalating. Now, how do you know? You do this thing called blood work. If you don't know how to get blood work done, have me do it. Most doctors, when you go get your blood work done, it's shit blood work because they're shit doctors. I have a video called Blood Work for Dummies. You must watch that if you want to survive. Using anabolic steroids and not using that video and not using that spreadsheet, it's over. So even smart people can benefit, but I make it idiot proof. And idiots will still fuck it up, but I do make it idiot proof. You have to really try not to do it right. Now we're going to get started. If you get to the point where your estrogen is so high, you've got nipple sensitivity or another symptom, 99.9% of the time, that's the first symptom. So I'm only going to entertain that. But there are potentially other symptoms. For instance, high blood pressure. If you're not smart enough to know whether your nipples are burning, you're not smart enough to measure your blood pressure. If your nipples are burning, you roll back to the previous safe dose. I once had to explain this to someone that they didn't understand what this meant. What this means is if you had no nipple burning at 40 milligrams a test a day, and you go up to 50 milligrams a test a day, and after a couple of weeks, your nipples start burning, go back to 40 milligrams a test a day. It's that simple. It may not go away right away. We might have to treat it. You could watch my gyno video, or you could get a consult with me. The link's in the description box, and I will walk you through how to treat your gyno. But the important part is we get blood values. Okay, at 40 test, you had a 52 estradiol and you were okay. At 50 milligrams of test, you had an 80 estradiol and you were not okay. That means that somewhere between 53 and 79 was too much estradiol. But we know that the dose, the safe input for test, was 40. Now that's at your current body fat percentage, current fat intake, and current calorie amount. I could have 15% body fat and I could be on 60 milligrams of test a day and have an 81 estradiol. When I have 10% body fat, I could be at 70 milligrams of test a day and have a 35 less estradiol. So 60 a day begets 80 estradiol at a 15% body fat, but 70 a day only begets a 35 estradiol at 10% body fat. Yet another reason why I disparage people for bulking. Bulking is dumb. There's no logic to it. It's based off of faulty beliefs and people being monkey see, monkey do. For more information about this, see the video Autopsy of Bulking with me and Scientific Snitch. She lays out her method and it's foolproof. And it's something that Dr. Eric Helms has proved before a long time ago, but he did it with natural athletes. Is there a possibility that using anabolic steroids will allow for more partitioning? Yes, but it doesn't invalidate her approach. I'm not going to get into it because that's not the point of this video. So I've talked to you about how to escalate your test dose. Once you find the max amount of estrogen you can handle, now you escalate your growth hormone dose. At some point, your body will stop making IGF-1. You could be a 2 estradiol, you could be of a 2 GH and have a 200 IGF-1, you could be at 4 and have a 250. You could get up to 6 and have a 300. You might want to stop there because the medical community feels anything over 300 IGF-1 could be potentially harmful. That you could be like, fuck the medical community. I don't give a fuck. I want to win this show. And so you're going to go up to 8 units and you have a 400 estradiol. Okay. I mean, a 400 IGF-1. You go up to 10 units and you have a 420. So now we're getting law of diminishing returns kicking in. You go up to 12 units, you still have a 420. So at that point, it basically started to hit its asymptote around 8 units. 10 units was slightly better than 8, and then 12 and higher, that doesn't change the IGF-1. So at that point, we've learned, we've receptor mapped you that this hypothetical person is safe at 40 test and is getting the best bang for his buck at 8 GH. So once you've maxed out your test and your GH, we look at your DHT. Is your DHT significantly higher than your estradiol? If it isn't, great. If it is, then that's an investigation in and of itself. We don't want the DHT being too high because it could cause hair loss if it's imbalanced with the estrogen. So you need the estrogen to convert the GH to IGF-1, and you need the estrogen to buffer the DHT. When you raise your testosterone, your DHT and your estradiol increase. So you never want to use too much test, and there's no benefit of using too much GH. All of this is clearer and more easy to understand on the Blood Work for Dummies video. Again, when do you advance gear load? You advance gear load at this point. You're done with level 1. In the previous video where I discussed the growth hormone peptides, how IGF-1 injected into the muscle in between sets is like level 7, and most people never get through level 1. This is level 1. I've almost never seen anyone do level 1 right, where they find the absolute limit on their testosterone and their GH, and they needed to go to level 2. In almost every circumstance, if someone's got a 1500 test on the blood work and they've got a 300 IGF-1 on their blood work, they will grow muscle if they do the 3 things you need to do correctly. 1, you're eating enough calories that you're not losing fat, that your body fat stays the same, that in theory, your weight would keep growing, but your fat would stay the same. That is enough calories. That doesn't mean more may not benefit you a little bit, but you don't need more calories as long as your fat levels aren't decreasing. So both me and Scientific Snitch feel that you could lead the target by basically 100 to 200 calories a day, and that would result in 1 or 2 pounds of weight gain a month. That should give you a sufficient amount of buffer to where you're never dipping into the calorie deficit. Doesn't mean you need to do that, but for peace of mind, so you're not like, oh, I'm blowing all this money on steroids. I don't want to be under eating and not growing. That if you're more afraid of losing money than you are about gaining fat, then running 100 to 200 calorie surplus should be enough of a buffer to where you're anabolic 100% of the time. But you're not excessively eating. That Eric Helms has proven that extra calories just turns to fat. After you're having enough calories to fuel anabolic processes, there is no significant amount of muscle growth to balance out all of the fat gain you grow. Like, let's say you gain 1 pound a month and you gained a half a pound of muscle and a half a pound of fat a month. If you went up to growing 6 pounds a month, you'd have 3/4 of a pound of muscle and then 5 1/4 pounds of fat. So instead of you having like a 8 month off season or 10-month off season, where at the end of it, you only have 8 or 10 pounds to shave off to get ready for the stage, you instead have a 3 month off season. And now you have like 20 pounds of fat to shave off. So your whole year is spent dieting rather than your whole year spent growing. So in the end, because you're losing months cutting, you're actually gaining less muscle over the span of a 12-month year. So if you're eating enough calories to grow, which according to Snitch is different from the rest of the population, I agree with her because it's an idea I had a long time ago. Eric Helms backed it up, but nobody understood it at the biochemical molecular level like she did and could show me with actual figures and that it made sense. All of the old bro science way of, anytime bro sciences throw shit at me like, oh, doctors don't know anything, I got to eat big to grow big, oh, the science isn't real. Like those guys, they lose all credibility. It's like one thing to say that the scientists tend to be wrong, that the pro bodybuilders do something different from the scientists, and the pro bodybuilders are big and the scientists are still small. That is a very valid observation, that you have outcome data contradicts mechanistic data. But when it comes to something as complicated as anabolic pharmacology and polypharmacy in competitive bodybuilders, which there's no studies on, then mechanistic data is the only valid data. The outcome data is no longer valid because the test subjects aren't the same as the population we're dealing with. And certainly for the general population, for you lifestyle people, there is no reason to ever deviate from the concept that you're not going to grow more than a half a pound of muscle a month, no matter how many fucking steroids you use. That anybody who gains 30 pounds of muscle in a month, it's all water. You can't trust anything those idiots say, unless it's newbie gains or unless you're tiny. Like if you're 120 pounds and you grow 100 pounds in 2 years to 220 pounds, that's great. But to me, the game starts at 200 pounds. That's when it gets hard. Your first 200 pounds are free. So yes, none of this applies to people under 200 pounds. So for somebody who really needs to grow muscle because they want to excel, they want to be superhuman, getting to the top limits of humans easy. Getting out of human and into superhuman, that's where it's a fucking very precise, arduous task that requires a Spartan monk. Once you've got the calories down and you're maybe in a very slight surplus, but the bottom line is you should be at least calorie maintenance. And you're sleeping 8 hours a day. It takes 8 hours a day I sleep 12 hours a day right now to grow. Cutting is different. You can get away with 6 hours cutting without having decreases in leptin. But for purposes of growing, you want to sleep at least 8 hours a day. If you don't have 8 hours to spend a day on sleeping, then you need to get your life straight and not worry about anabolic steroids yet. Stick to HRT and try to figure out, like maybe your kids are little, wait till your kids grow up and you can get 8 hours of sleep. Or if you're broke and you have to work 2 jobs, make some money and only work 1 job. And now you can actually devote yourself to your hobby of bodybuilding. But if you don't have 8 hours of sleep a night, there is no point in pursuing a hobby of bodybuilding. And there are people who are going to be in the comment section bitching and moaning about how they were able to grow, blah, blah, blah. They were tiny and they were young. It doesn't apply. It's easy when you're tiny and young. But if you're a full-size man at 200 pounds and you're a full adult at like 40 years old, if you're 40 and 200 pounds or more, not fat 200 pounds, like you've got a six-pack and you're 200 pounds and you're over 40, you're not going to grow muscle no matter how much steroids you use if you're not sleeping 8 hours a night. And as far as the last piece is training. Rather than me telling you how to train right here, I have a hypertrophy for dummies video. It is critical to have outline with PowerPoint presentation on everything you need to know about how to grow in how to train in one video. Now, yes, of course, I have training videos where I go into details, but if you don't have the core concepts down, like intensity, volume, fatigue, frequency, reps in reserve, relative effort, if you don't have tempo, if you don't have all that mastered, the basics, and you're like, that's the basics, I never even heard of half that shit. That's my point. Everybody's focused on the steroids and no one knows a fucking thing about training. That training has came a long way in the last 5 years. Training has came maybe 10 times more progress has been made in the science of training in the last 5 years than there has been in any other field. It's like the computer revolution between 1995 and 2005 is basically how training and bodybuilding has been since 2019. That it's really exciting time to be involved in bodybuilding. So if you've got your training down, if you follow the basic premises in the hypertrophy for dummies, and don't worry, it's not some optimized circle jerk shit. I talk about optimization that basically if something's not growing, you need to now go back to the drawing board and figure out why it's not growing. And that's when you institute optimal training. But you don't need to hyper focus on all of these super intricate unilateral cable exercises for your lats if your lats grow from pull-ups. So I'm very practical about it, just like I'm practical about anabolic pharmacology. It's about what works, not just a bunch of nasal gazing by a bunch of PhDs. So blood work for dummies, hypertrophy for dummies, autopsy of bulking, and the sleep hygiene video. Those 4 videos, that is your framework. And now we're ready for level 2. If you cannot grow, you're doing everything right from those 4 videos, and you cannot grow. And what do I mean by grow? What I mean is your logbook is not progressing. If you're at 300 pounds for 5 reps, that's too little. That's okay. You're at 250 pounds for 10 reps. And next week, 250 pounds for 10 reps. And next week, 250 pounds for 10 reps. That's not progressive resistance. It should be 250 pounds for 10 reps, then 255 pounds for 10 reps, then 260 pounds for 10 reps. You go up to 265 pounds and it goes on 9 reps. Oh, now we're plateaued. If you basically go 200, you don't advance load anymore. You have to work those reps up to 10. After 4 more weeks, you're still at 265 for 9 reps. That exercise is stale if it's just that exercise, or if it's like that throughout your whole fucking logbook, it means you've plateaued. Adding more food isn't going to help unless you're losing fat. If you're losing fat, you're in a calorie deficit. Now you have to increase the food. Are you sleeping 8 hours? If you're sleeping at 8 hours and you don't have apnea, then you're good. Watch the sleep hygiene video. If you're doing everything right and you're sleeping 8 hours, then you're good. Are your training techniques good? If you videotaping yourself and your form's perfect, that amplitude's the same on all your reps, the tempo's the same on all your reps, it's fucking textbook form. The first rep could be a GIF and you could just replicate that GIF and you watch the GIF on loop. So you can't tell the difference between a set of 10 and a set of 2 replicated 5 times and the very last rep is slow but perfect and you don't go for an extra rep. The first 9 reps were easy and smooth. That 10th rep was a grinder. You're done. That's 1 rep in reserve, you're done. Then if all that's right, that's when you increase the load. Now, since we've already maximized the test and we've already maximized the GH, now is when we add in the Masteron. And you're like, why Masteron? It's like, because it's the side effect. It's the most tolerable, safest, cleanest anabolic steroid. And if you needed to know more, watch the my first cycle or your first cycle video where I go through and it's almost like a challenger, like Baki. If you ever saw Baki, it's like I pit every anabolic steroid up against Masteron and all of them fucking lose. That I go into potency versus efficacy, and that just because 20 milligrams of this drug is stronger than 100 milligrams of that drug doesn't mean you use 5 times as much of this and you get 5 times the growth of this. That's not how potency works. There's a maximum efficacy. And as soon as you hit that, all right, watch. This is a power button, right? This is the power button. My phone lights up. The harder I push that power button, this doesn't get brighter. It's a light switch. That's all it is. So once you've got enough of a signal to grow, from the anabolics, you're going to grow. You don't need to add more signal to grow faster. The muscle machinery only grows at such a rate. The muscles only grow at a half a pound a month tops. Some people will say otherwise. I don't care. If you are over 40 and you have 200 pounds with a six pack, you are not going to grow more than a half a pound a month. You're not going to grow more than a half a pound of muscle a month. Anything you grow over a half a pound a month is going to be fat and water. That if you're making progress in the gym, you're growing. So you use just enough anabolic steroids to drive it. Masteron is the cleanest, safest option. You stack it on top of the test and the GH, and it'll push you up in the anabolic signal. With the reason why we're not using more test is because the DHT can be harmful and the estrogen can be harmful. We already know that you've maxed out that limit on the test. That's why we're using the mask. You would not believe how many motherfuckers come to me and they're throwing in 40, 50, 80 milligrams of mask. I'm like, more drugs does not make you grow faster. It does not make you grow more muscle. You're supposed to use just enough to get the job done. It's like when you go to a restaurant and the burrito costs $11. Do you pay $30 for the burrito? No, you pay $11 for the burrito. So paying more money make that burrito taste better? No. Will paying more money make that burrito more filling? No. And you're like, well, you could get 3 burritos for $33, but your stomach is only so big. You can only fit 1 burrito in there, and your body will clear that burrito and be ready for another burrito in 2 hours. If you tried to cram 2 burritos in there, you might be digesting that for 6 or 7 hours. And then you might just get diarrhea from it. So that's not the right way to do it. So the correct thing to do is you add in a little bit of Masteron and make that logbook start moving again. And when that logbook stops moving, you add in a little bit more Masteron, assuming the sleep, the food, and the training are still perfect. This is so simple. Everybody wants to believe it's more complicated than this. It isn't. This is a foolproof method. It works for everyone who does it. I know of one person that this doesn't work for, and then he switched from Masteron to Primo, and it worked. But the same person has extremely bad reaction to growth hormone, so we can't leverage the estrogen and growth hormone as a growth mechanism. So whether the Primo's crushing his estrogen or not isn't a problem. Now, there are going to be comments in the comment section about what about Masteron does this? This is not a Masteron video. That is not the point of this video. I am not defending Masteron in this video. If you don't like my opinion, go fuck yourself. I'm a medical doctor, and my medical opinion is that Masteron is the right first step as an anabolic steroid goes. And if someone has real symptom issues, because they're not going to have blood work issues, if someone has real symptom issues on Masteron, that's when you would try something else. But everything else you try is going to have even worse problems. If you can't tolerate Masteron, you just probably shouldn't be using anabolic steroids. I've never met someone who couldn't tolerate Masteron but could tolerate anything else. That usually some people are just fragile and everything fucks them up. And I don't know what it is, whether they're just doing shit wrong or what. Because unless I follow them around with a camera all day to see everything they're doing, I don't know what they're fucking up. But in my experience, most of the people fuck up everything. Everything. You'll work with someone for 5 or 6 years and they will fuck it up. Like I had some guy, like he had a meal that was eggs and spinach, mushrooms, tomatoes, and he was eating the eggs raw, then eating raw spinach, then eating mushrooms raw, then eating tomato slices raw, and then drinking oil. He didn't think that you're supposed to put the oil in the pan, put the eggs in the pan, put the vegetables after pre-sauteing them in the same amount of oil in the omelet, and then fold it over. Like some people are so fucking dumb, they don't know how to cook. And they're not even smart enough to like think, is this to be eaten raw or should I make it in an omelet like a regular person? And you can't account for that shit. Even if you have a video called Meal 1, the omelet, they won't watch the Meal 1 omelet video. They'll just do something stupid like snort their pre-workout. There's no accounting for stupid. I once made a topical fat burner to be that you take the diet pill rather than the Valkyrie. You would take a topical fat burner rather than the Valkyrie cream. You apply the cream to where you want to burn the fat from. Take the pill, and I had designed it so the pill would burn fat from the location you applied the cream, and it worked. And people are like, that doesn't work. You can't do spot reduction. Shut the fuck up, cunt. I did it. What these people were doing is they were eating the cream. So I kind of had to stop making it. You can't account for how stupid people are. As simple and clear and concise as this video and the other videos are, there will be at least 10% of people who will fuck up so bad they'll have consequences, despite this being foolproof on how to succeed. So this is the most safe and effective way to use anabolic steroids and to escalate the dose. That doesn't mean anyone needs to. Most men over 40 should be on some HRT. But based on blood work, you need to get the blood work done and see. I've had a guy who was 70 and had an 800 natural test. Didn't need it. He was on growth hormone because I wanted to keep him young forever, but he didn't want to use growth hormone because it was too much. He thought it was too big of a commitment. Okay, I'm not going to twist someone's arm, but never, ever, 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 ever is an appropriate thing for some 22-year-old dude to be like, oh, my muscles are small. I hate myself. I'm going to start injecting 500 tests once a week and hope for the best. So you take one insulin syringe, you load it up to here with test, you load it up to here with GH, and then if you're supposed to use some Masteron, you load it up with the Masteron, and then you can put it in and you push the plunger down. That's it. It's so simple, and people fuck it up. That's unbelievable. People still fuck this up. If you're not progressing in the gym and you're eating enough, you're training right, and you're sleeping enough, per my opinion in my videos, then that is when you escalate the dose a tiny amount, like 20 milligrams. Since every one of those 10 ticks on the insulin syringe, this much is 20 test, this much is 2 GH, this much is 20 Masteron, this would be 40 Masteron, this would be 60 Masteron. So this would be 20 test, 60 Masteron, and 2 GH. But you're done. You're done. That's all you had to do before bed. That's it. All of the questions people have are completely and totally fucking unnecessary. This, what about what so-and-so said? And what about Primo? And what about Proviron? And what about Anadrol? This big guy at the gym who's covered in pimples and has no hair and is purple told me to do this. What do you think I should do, doctor? None of that shit is relevant. Everything you need to know, you just heard. It is that simple. It sounds too easy. It sounds too good to be true. It is that simple. Thank you for watching. I hope you have a great day. May the force be with you.